evening to the World Wide Web. You're watching Metro Detroit Resource Network coming to you live on itswebtv.com, located in Southfield, Michigan. We got a call-in number, everybody. Please make yourself at home and indulge yourself. We welcome your calls, 248-996-8954. Tonight, you're going to hear one hell of a show because I'm going to tell you about my life history in relation to drugs and narcotics. And if I can help anybody out there, then I've served my purpose, because an addict alone is an addict in bad company. But first, I want to talk to everybody all throughout the world of a couple things. We lost a great, great man in Detroit a couple weeks ago. We lost Emanuel Stewart. Emanuel Stewart, the great, great boxing promoter in Detroit, has left us. Now, yesterday morning, he was sent away at the Greater Detroit Greater Grace Church. And every celebrity boxer, Sugar Ray Leonard was in town yesterday morning, Michael Moore, the president of HBO was at this funeral, and I could go, the Klitschko brothers, Hilmer Kente, Tommy Hearns, I heard, was crying. Their funeral, they had 5,000 people at this funeral. And later in the evening yesterday, they had a repast at the downtown Detroit nightclub, the Rooster Tail, which went on till about 4 or 5 in the morning. Now, I'm 61 years old. Boxing is one of my favorite sports. Emanuel Stewart used to bring Tommy Hearns into my store, Sermon's Close, downtown Detroit, when I was 16, 17 years old. So I followed Emanuel for the last 40-some-odd years. And, you know, he was a freelance trainer. He trained Lennox Lewis, who was not, in Detroit. He was, even Evander Holyfield hired him for a few fights. And not only that, he was the father of the young men that he took off the streets and got involved in boxing. If it weren't for Emanuel Stewart, there's no telling what would have happened, to Tommy Hearns. Now, the deal is, Emanuel's contract with Tommy Hearns was 50-50. But the real story is Emanuel paid for the ring setup. He paid for travel expenses. He paid for the training. So it was a pretty good deal. But we lost a great, great man in the city of Detroit. Not only that, he was a nightclub owner. He owned the 1940 Chop House downtown Detroit. He had Kronk Gym, which I hear Judge Mathis is going to be rebuilding the Kronk Gym in Southfield, Michigan. Later on this year, they're supposed to be putting this together. What else I want to talk to you all about tonight is serious. Check this out. When the Republicans saw that President Obama was winning the elections, 30 states wanted to secede from the Union. They could not handle the fact that a black man was becoming the president of the United States. Again, wait to hear this story. Wait to hear this story. This was on, I posted this on my Facebook pages all over. I got it on YouTube. A white pregnant lady was in a shopping mall, and she was so upset that her husband didn't vote, and she wanted him to vote, for Romney. She got into an argument with her husband, and check this out. This is unbelievable. She drove over her husband in the parking lot and pinned him down because the argument got so out of hand, all because she didn't want a black president of the United States. All right, now, let me just tell you real briefly what's going on, what's happening in Detroit. Lansing, we have Governor Rick Snyder. Rick Snyder is a powerful, rich Republican tyrant who used to own Gateway Computer Company. He has been trying to privatize and take over the city of Detroit. We had on our ballot last week on the elections what we call Public Act 4. Public Act 4 was a choice that the citizens could vote on that would either approve or deny. This ballot would give an emergency manager to be put in place in the Detroit school board. It got defeated. This is the greatest. Even though it got defeated, the governor is still taking control over all the Detroit public schools, and he will not let the school board, the Detroit school board, meet in any of the schools. So they had a countersuit today in City Hall, and the judge did not want to hear this case. Listen to his answer. Listen to his reason. Because his brother-in-law is a Detroit school teacher. We got some real sick stuff going on between our governor and the city of Detroit. He wants to take over everything. It is totally unacceptable. This school board didn't have, what he's saying is that the school board, when they got elected, they were not legitimately approved in the ballots, and the ballots were erroneous, and he wants to, he's going to try to prove that they have no ground to stand on to be in our school board. So he's rendering them powerless. But the real deal is the emergency manager has no control, no jurisdiction, but he's got the police convinced that this Public Act 4 has nothing to do with anything. They still have power. Detroit is 85% African American, and this governor is enacting all his power, all his control to take over everything. He doesn't care about quality education for the young African American kids. He doesn't care about violence. He doesn't care about the abandoned houses on the streets, which are safe havens for sexual predators, for drug trafficking. He doesn't care. He doesn't care if they don't have jobs. He wants to control the city. His ultimate goal is to take over the water system in Detroit. And this is really going to get you. Bush, baby Doc Bush, that got out of office, is sending his daughter around the country to buy up the water rights for all the local water departments in the cities in the United States. They want control. I'm sickened by this. What's happening in Detroit is our residents, 85% African American, are so tired of being beaten down, poor leadership, a lack of police. The police are not helping us. We had 375 murders already, and it's not even the end of the year. Public lighting is in the toilet. Public services are very shoddy. The closing of the libraries, the closing of the Detroit school system, take over the transportation system. It is anarchy. And, across the nation, I wouldn't be surprised if we're heading towards some kind of civil unrest in this country. If you think about what Ryan, going for vice president, was standing on, not interested in schools, not interested in jobs, not interested in abortion. The Republicans are so far to the right, they're way out of it, man. They're way out of it. So here's the deal. This show is Metro Detroit Resource Network. I'm Barry Ross. I've been around for a while. I was on the streets. I was homeless. I did drugs for 25 years. My family had a business. I worked downtown Detroit for 40 years. I go on the streets in the city of Detroit for violence, march for families that have had murders, board up abandoned houses. I know what's going on in the streets. And I can't believe that the people are so beat down that we can't get them to get involved. It's sad. All right, now I want America, get ready. Get ready. Wait till you hear this. I'm 61 years old. I'm a recovering drug addict. I started using, the first drug I started using was glue. You hear me? I was using airplane glue when I was a kid. My friend and I, we used to go to the 5 and dime store, and we used to buy up all the squeeze tubes of glue that the little kids would go in and play in the glue in the stores, the little metal tubes of glue, and we would get deals on them. And we would take the glue, and we would pour them into baggies, plastic baggies. When I was 14, 15 years old, baggies were around, and we would, sniff the glue in the baggies. And that was the first drug I started using. But what I want to tell you is my father was a doctor, a medical doctor. My father was a very brilliant man. He went to U of M when he was barely 15, and they kept advancing him. And I think my father was going through some kind of social identity thing where, he was younger than everybody else, and he felt he needed the confidence and the belong, and he found out about amphetamine, speed, uppers. My father started taking speed in the late 1920s, 1930s. So he goes to World War II, and he was a doctor in the Army, and he was overseas with Germany and in Africa. My father was in Africa, and he was putting together soldiers that were getting blown apart while he was under the influence of narcotics, while he was under the influence of amphetamines. So amphetamines accentuate your thinking. They speed up your thinking process. So my father started developing a major addiction, and by the time I was about 10, I knew my father wasn't normal. He would walk around with a cigar container, one of those old-fashioned metal Corolla cigar containers filled up with, Dexedrine. And my father would take so many pills in the course of the day that he would salivate like a mad dog. Now, as a little boy, I'm watching this, and I was watching my father's mood changes and what have you. And the very first time I got high, you hear me? I knew I was home because I didn't have to feel. And I knew one thing, I didn't like feeling. I needed to escape. I needed to get out of the chaos that I was living in our home. My people got divorced when I was, very, very young. So I started drinking. I was doing glue. And by the time I was 16 years old, I started taking LSD and got into heroin. Now, we're going back into 1967. What I always realized was that in order to maintain, now I took all different kinds of drugs. I took drugs that you couldn't function well. I took these drugs, downers, there was these drugs, Tuinals, Secanols, Quaaludes, and they made you like you were drunk. So if you took too many, you would slur. It was easy to tell that someone was stoned. And so I was constantly switching one drug for another, still enjoying it when I was young. And by the time I was in my late 20s, I started going to Jamaica. And I was going to a very isolated part of Jamaica called Negril. They had a nude beach. They were selling drugs like it was no tomorrow. You could buy marijuana, you could bring it back to the United States, you could buy mushroom tea, and what they were selling there were these Secanos barbiturates. So I was riding a motorcycle, right? I'm riding a motorcycle, and I'm under the influence of the most dangerous drug you could be on to operate any kind of machinery. And I was going up a mountain road, and the car was coming towards me, and I didn't have too many choices, and I jumped off the bike. The bike kept going, and it hit a wall, and it bounced back and knocked out the middle of my right eye. Knocked out my orbit, the entire bone, and I was in a Jamaican hospital for about 5 days with third world doctors from Cuba, and it was a nightmare, not knowing the extent of my damages. I ultimately ended up coming back to the United States. I've had 30 eye operations, but what I want to tell you is that I continued to use drugs all the way up till I was 35 years of age. And regardless as to what the consequences were, no matter who I was with, no matter what kind of situations could occur, knowing in advance that if I took this drug, I could either get into an accident, I could get arrested, it didn't stop me from doing it. In 1980, I started dealing pills on a very small level with my own father. My father was a doctor, like I said, so he would write prescriptions under different names, and I would go to the drugstore, but it was a very small-scale thing. So I realized that my family business was getting in the way of this drug dealing, and even though it was making very little money, it was enough to keep me going. My father dies. I found my father dead in his apartment on his birthday, and now what am I going to do? I had a little money, and this was in 1981 October. I went back to Jamaica again, get into another accident, stay there for a few months, come back broke, and I stay with my girlfriend. In the summer of 1982, I inherited a little money from my dad. I got about $40,000, $50,000. When I got down to my last $5,000, I got into the script mill business. And there was a clinic in Detroit that dispensed prescriptions, and you could get as many prescriptions as you want and get people to run them. So I found runners to go to all these different drugstores to get pills. We got thousands and thousands of pills. I had quite an operation going. All this time, I'm now under the influence of methadone. And I got to tell you, one day I decide to quit. I was never so sick in my life. Methadone is the most pervasive narcotic you could possibly put into your body. It goes into every aspect of every molecule, every bone, every tissue, every ligament, every muscle. And after 2 days, I quit cold, and I thought I was going to die. I was never in more pain in my life. And I finally beat that. But I'm switching to other narcotics. I'm still dealing drugs. My God, and I so many things kept happening. One morning, my girlfriend's asleep in my apartment, and every morning I used to wake up very hungover, so I started taking cold showers. So I get in the shower. Now, mind you, I'm on the strongest narcotic known to man. They administer this in hospices where, patients are dying of terminal illness, cancer, leukemia. I get into the shower, and I'm thinking I'm turning the cold water on. I turn on the scalding water, and I was so numb from the methadone that it scalded my forehead. And what a nightmare. Now, you would think I would have woken up from this. I mean, literally. Nope. I still continue to use. I switched one drug from another. In 1986, April of 86, April 22nd, I went into my first treatment center for substance abuse. I didn't go in to quit drugs for the rest of my life. I went in to dry out. They broke me down. For the first time in my life, I learned to understand what makes me tick. Drugs were just a symptom of my problem. I was my problem. At 35 years of age, they broke me down. I'm telling you, I was sick. I was crying in treatment. I was weak. Man, I had diarrhea so bad it was coming down my legs. I was so sick in there, throwing up. I was incorrigible. They couldn't handle me. I was in a co-ed ward. I used to come out in my underwear in the morning. I was in for 30 days. My lady's coming to visit me from the outside, and my substance counselor, my psychiatrist, says he wants to have a meeting with her and me. And one morning, we set up a meeting, and she comes in, and he looks at her, and he says, "Excuse me, Susan, are you stoned?" And she says, "Yes, I am." And he says, "What's going on?" She says, "Oh, I just got high in the parking lot." He says, "Do you have drugs on you now?" And she says, "Yup." And I'm sitting in there, and you know what? I wasn't even surprised. I probably would have done the same thing. 2 weeks later, she convinced me on a pass to get out for the day on a Saturday. She convinced me to go to the dope house and score for her. And I did. We had set it up when I got out of treatment, even though I was going to be straight for 30 days, that I was going to get high. Something happened. On my 23rd day, they took us on a excursion to an outside Narcotics Anonymous meeting. And I walked into this church. I don't go to churches. I'm Jewish. You hear me? I walked in there and I saw two friends of mine that I knew in the 60s that I thought were the most screwed up junkies known to man. They used to wait outside of the bank on the first of the month and rob old ladies of their purses, break into houses. Oh, I could go on and on and on. But here's what happened. When I saw them, I said to myself, I think I want to do this. It was an epiphany. A light went off in me. I started going to meetings. I started going to Narcotics Anonymous meetings, Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. The first step in A and NA says, quote unquote, we admitted we were powerless over addiction and our lives had become unmanageable. That tells me the only way that I could ever stay straight of substances was not to ever pick up anything whatsoever. Because if I thought back to when I was a kid, every time I switched one for another, I ultimately ended up back, on the big stuff. And I thought about it. I never could stop at one. Never. So that made sense to me. Just don't pick up anything at all. That, to me, I could cry, was such a revelation. And it told me something else. I have a choice. No one and nothing can make me get high. And the same for you or anybody out in the universe that's on drugs. But I'm going to tell you something. When you're under the influence and when you're sick, you don't know you have a choice. You don't know it. So we go to meetings and we tell each other this. But when we get out of the meetings and we have a thought or an obsession, we got to think it through, not to. It took a while for me to get with this. So I started going to meetings every day. And I started getting honest for the first time in my life. And hanging with people that were doing good. Every friend I ever had was either selling drugs, doing drugs, talking about drugs, being around drugs, thinking about drugs, all of it. My whole lifestyle. So I changed all my friends like that. I got all new friends. I made all new friends. It was a process. And every time I thought about getting high, I talked about it. Now, my life, I thought, for the first time, for a junkie not to use is beyond a miracle. That's not supposed to happen. So to me, that was my main priority for the first 4 or 5 years. I went to 2, 3, 4. On Saturdays and Sundays, I think I went to 5 to 8 meetings a day. I'd go to Narcotics, Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, switch up, go to the shows in between. I was living with my lady. and we would go to, everything was centered around all recovery. After 8 years of 100% total abstinence, I had chronic back pain, which I had always had for many years. And I knew better, but I called my back doctor, and he gave me a prescription for Vicodin. And within a couple weeks, I said, you know what? One feels cool, but I'm going to take another one. Well, I ultimately ended up relapsing. For at least 15 years, I was on and off, again, pain medication. And to the day that I die, I will always be in a process of recovering. I'm 61. I still think from time to time about using drugs. And you know what? I definitely think about smuggling, but that I'm never going to do that. I'm in a whole different world today. But what I've learned is, if I can stay straight, so can you. Anyone can. The support groups, I think of it like this. If I had cancer and I had to have chemotherapy, and I'm throwing up, and I'm going to the toilet, and I'm losing my hair, who else feels where I'm coming from but somebody else that's experiencing it? The sense of identification is synonymous. Nobody feels what you feel unless they go through it. You know, people tell you, you know, man, I feel your pain, but they don't. You can't feel someone's pain unless you're having that kind of pain. One thing I'll say about drug addicts and alcoholics, they know the pain with shame, humiliation is the same. The degrees are different. How they did it are different. But when you feel shame and humiliation and embarrassment, man, some of the things I used to do while I was under the influence, unbelievable, that I wouldn't even think of doing today. Today, I'm an activist. Today, I have a TV show, and I don't participate in active, ongoing recovery, but I went to meetings for so many years and talked about it for so long that I know that using drugs it's always an option, but I think it through. You know, today, like I said, when I was 14, we sniffed glue. Some of the things the kids do today, I did 50 years ago. So, but we didn't want to kill ourselves back then. The kids are going through a whole suicide thing today. The values and regard for human life today and our culture across the board, all over the country, all over the world, human life is not sacrilegious, rather. We don't appreciate human life. The youth take it for granted. You know, here's a young teenager, a young man, 15, and society's telling him, say, hey, listen, all you got to do is go to school and get an education, and then watch this. Here it comes. They go like, and you can become successful. Now, we equate success in terms of money. So now he's thinking, okay, he's got to do this. But now his 17-year-old brother in the house is rolling, selling drugs, slinging drugs. Their father, their grandfather, worked their whole lives, never owned a new car. This 15-year-old sees his brother with the jewelry, with the money, with the car, brand new car, and he says, you know what? So what if I die when I'm 20? At least I can say I had it all. So the culture today is very hard to deal with. We're the family unit, as we know it, is so dysfunctional and so not there. The divorce rate for married couples is probably 60-70%, in this country. And fathers aren't stepping up to raise their kids. My generation has dropped the ball on their children in the cities. There's no one parenting these young men to let them know there's another way how to live. What do they have to look forward to? If your life is one way every day, what makes you think tomorrow is going to be any different? You must have hope based on some kind of optimism that things can change, because they always did change for you. You always got out. You always got out. There was always a way for you to step up. The schools are closing. Education is through the roof. Young men don't even want to be in school. They're not even forced to be in school. Truancy is at a high rate. Listen, I quit school when I was 16. I didn't want to go to school past the 5th or 6th grade. So I don't blame some of these kids. Now, I broke into a couple houses. We stole a couple cars. But today, it's fashionable to murder for no reason. They don't need a reason to kill somebody. So in some of the cities, a man or woman can get robbed. They better tell themselves there's a high likelihood that this criminal, this perpetrator, whether he gets what he wants or not from me, he's going to kill me. Because the perpetrator could be thinking he's upset that you have something that he didn't have when he robs you. He's upset that you don't have it. He doesn't like you because he doesn't like you. My God. I'm a big proponent of self-esteem. If your child isn't feeling love, and I don't mean love with money, I'm talking about holding your child. I'm talking about holding your son and telling him you can be whatever you want to be. If he doesn't feel that in the house, if he doesn't have a man to guide him, to let him know what it's all about, his self-worth is low, then he's got nothing to lose. He has nothing to lose at all. And we must feel that there's something to lose, that there's a price to pay if I do this or I do that. And think about how I'm going to feel if I take somebody out. I think a lot of these young men and young ladies, and I want to talk about what's going on with the young girls today, which is really crazy. They are so sociopathic that they're psychopathic. They're not conscionable. I mean, it's hard to believe that somebody could hurt somebody else and not feel hurt for hurting them. I don't even want to hurt a cat. You hear me? I don't want to. When I was younger, man, we would drill holes through birds when I was a kid. I'm surprised I never abused animals when I got older, because I was an evil kid. I was an angry kid. I was a hurt kid. Abuse, sexual abuse, is taught. If your father rapes you, you're going to rape. If you get abuse in the house, more than likely, you're going to abuse. These pedophiles out here, that stuff is taught. The city of Detroit right now has 25 serial rapists. Serial rapists. Now, our governor, Englander, I don't know how many years, 6, 7 years ago, 8 years, 10 years ago, he closed the mental institutions. He took away the prison programs. We have so much mental illness on the streets of Detroit, and I mean literally, that need to be medicated, The homeless issue is another story, but we have people on the street that are literally schizophrenic, hearing voices. They're out there hurting others. I mean, man, it's the Twilight Zone. It's really the Twilight Zone. So I just found out recently that young ladies, young girls, are violating other young girls. So, you know this thing about, they call it jumping to get into a gang. So here's a gang of girls, and they go rape another girl as a power trip and get them in their gang. And now they got a gang of young lesbian maniacs running around. And there's a major proliferation of young girls that are gay. There's young guys that are gay. But the young girls I hear in these schools are so dangerous. They don't let other young girls go to the bathroom. They're intimidating them. They're jumping on the teachers. These are not just isolated instances. And nothing's changing. It's the same old, day in and day out. We had an incident in Detroit where a young man, I think he was about 14, was at a school after hours. Two men knocked on the door. I think it was at the gym. They carried this young man off and raped him. I mean, my God. The stories that we hear that are out here, the violations of little babies. How does a man rape a baby? How do we rehabilitate him? Why do we even want to rehabilitate him? My God. We have so much sickness. So when we go into a community, my activist friends and I, myself, we want to let the perpetrators know, as sick as we know they are, that we want to help them. We don't want to come in and hurt them because they're hurting others. We come in with love. All we want to do is stop sickness. But the problem is, we don't have enough of us. We don't have leadership in the city of Detroit. Our mayor, Dave Bing, is a punk. Dave Bing, pro basketball player, went to the playoffs, probably has a few rings. Dave Bing was a great basketball player in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, became mayor of the city, and he has just let the city run amok. We have 100,000 abandoned homes. There's hardly any trash pickup in the city. And let's say your son gets murdered. Good luck getting the police to come out, and when the police come out, good luck calling them a week or two later to find out how the investigation's going. I just had the wife of a cab driver 3 weeks ago. A Detroit cab driver was murdered on the east side of Detroit. I just had her on my show. She's not getting too much love from the police department. We've had the last two police chiefs. We've gone through, I think, 4 police chiefs in the last few years. The last one we had just got thrown out on a sex charge. We had 2 more cops thrown out on a sex charge and the hierarchy of the police department. And the governor has cut the police pay by 10%. He's making them work extra hours. Morale is bad. They changed the police departments. Instead of actual police departments, now we have districts, so that means there's less manpower for a larger area of coverage. Check this out. This is just it right here. You ready for this? The Detroit Police Department, each police station is closed. Their doors are closed from 4 in the afternoon till 8 in the morning, when most of the crimes happen. So I'm surprised there's just like 100 kids ain't just going and taking over everything they want, robbing all the banks, just killing everybody, taking whatever they want, because it seems like they could. They're not going to stop them. Most of the 9/11 alarms that go off are false alarms. So the response time is terrible. Man, we just closed 20 fire stations. And the equipment we have in the city of Detroit is shoddy, antiquated, played out. 2 years ago, Ivy, 2-year-old little baby girl on the east side of Detroit. There was a fire in the home, and for some reason, don't ask me how this occurred, she was upstairs alone, like in a second floor. There's a fire breaking out. I don't know how this baby was up there alone. The mama and the grandmother call the fire department. They send out a fire truck with no water hookup and no ladder. And baby Ivory had died from smoke inhalation. They sent out a fire truck that couldn't hook up to water and had no fire and had no ladder to get up to the second floor to get her. So myself and my close associate, Minister Shabazz, Robert Robinson, we set up a fund called the Ivy Emergency Children's Fund for babies who die in fires whose families can't afford to bury them. Because now you're not expecting your kids to die, and you ain't got a job, and now you got to pay for the funerals. Man, what's going on in this city? What's going on here? What is going on? It's total chaos. We have areas in the city of Detroit where there's 75% unemployment. Here's one of our biggest problems with jobs. In this country, there's jobs, but the technology that's required to man these jobs isn't available. So even though there's several million men and women out of work, when jobs become available, they're not trained technologically to handle these positions. That's becoming our newest problem. And a man or a woman that was a blue-collar worker that worked on the assembly line for 30 years, you ain't going to even teach him how to turn on a damn computer. Because he or she's telling himself, I know, because I didn't know how to turn on a computer until I was 50. They're telling themselves they'll never do it. They're defeated before they start. Man, I don't know. Wow. The city of Detroit is exploited. There's not enough supermarkets with good food. The neighborhoods in the city don't have much retail. What Detroit is a black city with a white downtown. Dan Gilbert owns the Cleveland Cavaliers, came downtown Detroit with Quicken Loans and gobbled up about 14 buildings. He's making it a hot spot. Downtown Detroit is a place to be. Tenancies getting filled up. Occupancy in these buildings. These buildings had about most of the average occupancy rate in the buildings down in Detroit was about 30-40%. It's probably doubled since he came in. But the problem is there's nothing going on in your neighborhood. There's a wig shop, a party store, a gas station, and a dope house, and not a supermarket. So you're going to Wendy's, you're going to McDonald's, you're going to the party store, they're overcharging you, they're talking behind your back, they're selling you bad meat. Or if you go to an inner city market, and you're lucky there's one around you, they don't have the same quality meat as they have in the suburbs because they don't care about you. I don't know what it's going to take for Detroiters to wake up, to rally with us. We could use 1,000 people right now to wrap ourselves around these schools to not let the governor's police in to schools that they have no jurisdiction over. We need 1,000 bodies right now to join us to stop the Michigan governor and his emergency manager, who's rendered powerless, who's intimidating the city, who has no power. He wants everyone to think he has power, and they're all running scared. Well, I'm not scared. I'm not afraid of the governor. I'm not afraid of the police. You know, a lot of times women call the police. This doesn't happen a lot, but there's a lot of, the majority of police are good, but the community relations between the police and the community are terrible. The community does not trust the police because so many times the police get called and they turn on the residents. So they're tired of all this shit. And I don't blame them. So what are you going to do? This Occupy movement ain't about nothing as far as I'm concerned. They came to Detroit and they did some moves with Bank of America, lobbying on a couple banks, but we need them to come out with us, man. We need them to get dirty, get down and out, get raw with us, come out on the streets with us. They got all these kids, all these young white kids, predominantly white kids. Let them come out with us. We need the numbers. This isn't even a question anymore of white and black. Everybody's getting stepped on in America. It doesn't matter anymore. Yes, it's classism and racism. And the middle class is losing. The poor is growing. It's sad. So you know what we have? We got us. All we got left is us. Remember in the olden days, in the cowboy days, you'd watch a cowboy movie when the wagon train would travel. It was always going out west, right? And when they got into the barren land, and sure enough, here come the Indians, what does the wagon train do? They form a circle, not to let the Indians in, they start shooting at them. But if the Indians outmanned the Cowboys could only do one thing, hopefully hold them off until the cavalry came. The problem is the cavalry, the U.S. cavalry, ain't about nothing anymore. They're not coming to help you anymore. The police aren't coming and the government aren't coming. The only people that we can get to come help you is you. You join us. You join us. We got enough movements going on. We can organize to take our city back ourselves. We need 1,000 men and women to join us right now. Here's my plan. We go from Detroit in our cars down 96 freeway, and we get about 30 miles outside of Detroit. We get about 300 of us. We get out of our cars and sit on the hoods of our cars and stop traffic. We stop commerce. We stop the trucks from moving. What are they going to do? Come and shoot us all? I could be the number one car. I'll lead it. I'll lead it. We have to start getting physical. And I'm not talking about starting violence. We have to start getting out and making a stance in our community. United States, no one's calling into the show. You want to be about something? Come to Detroit and help us. We could start an army here. We need an army against our governor because he's a dictator. He's no better than a legal Hitler. That's all he is. He's a legal punk-ass Hitler. Punk-ass governor. Let me tell you his problem. He's a deep-rooted sissy who, when he was a little boy, he got his ass beat, so he's into bullying. I always thought when you get in a fight someone bigger than you. You don't step on someone smaller than you. So he's after the weak because he knows the weak are weary. Listen up. My name is Barry Ross. I live in Royal Oak, Michigan. I'm on this itswebtv.com on Wednesdays for the rest of the month and hopefully beyond. You can go to me on YouTube, ROSSBD51. This show here in 3 days is going to be the on-demand feature under entertainment on itswebtv.com. www.itswebtv.com. It has an on-demand. On-demand means it's always available. The shows are stored in a video player for your convenience. Let's say you missed me tonight. Let's say you missed the nitty-gritty show before me, or you caught the last 10 minutes. in 2 or 3 days, they probably got a faster life getting stocked than me. In 2 or 3 days, because they're a live show, in 2 or 3 days, you go to It's Web TV. What are they under? It's entertainment also? Yeah. You go to entertainment, nitty gritty, and you can see their shows, and you can see Barry Ross by, what's today, Wednesday? By Sunday, it's all right. By Sunday, I'll be up, and every Tuesday night, I got a TV show that's online and it's on TV. But if you don't live here, you go to www.tv33whpr.com. When I'm live in the community, straight up with the community, I'm working now with divisions of city government, hospitals, colleges. We're resourcing all this, pooling it all together, like I want to pool your ass together in America to come join us to make a difference. We can take every city back in the United States ourselves. Forget this Occupy shit. Let's do some real stuff. Let's get education for our kids. Let's just do it. Let's demand it. We need to demand and make our politicians accountable. We put them in office, we can get them out of office. If your police department isn't given what you need, you get 300 people and you start calling them and you flood the phone lines. We have an armament, an arsenal of weaponry that is nonviolent to get, to call people to action. We flood the phone lines. We petition. We get out there. We protest. We call them out. Embarrass them, whatever we have to do. We got a way to work with the politicians, the police, the communities, to get the people out of their house, the hospitals. We got a way. Listen to what happened to a friend of mine real quick. He takes his mentally challenged son, who's in his mid-30s, to the hospital. He had he was nauseous and he was throwing up. He's in emergency, this young man, and he's vomiting all over. And my friend is watching the receptionist watch this young man vomit in the emergency room, and she's not moving. And he goes up to her, and she goes, "Talk to the hand. Talk to the hand." And he goes nuts. He gets the lady fired, and with good reason. Do you hear me? You shouldn't be working in a hospital watching someone throw up around other patients and not giving them the dignity and respect to try to assist them and clean this up. We call everyone to task. If someone's not treating you right, whether it's a bank, whether it's your mortgage company, whether it's the renter, the homeowner, and you're renting, you got rights. We all got rights. Everybody has the right to demand quality service. When you go to a restaurant and you don't like your food, you can send your food back. But there's a way how to do it, okay? It's called tact. It's called diplomacy. You get more fleas with honey. Is it bees with honey? You get more bees with honey. I think it's fleas with honey, but I think it's bees. Yeah, you kill them with kindness. I have gotten more things turned around by talking right to people that didn't give me quality service than by insulting them back. Okay, your old lady, you're married, and she just wants to step on your neck. You come home after a hard day, and as soon as she rags on you, what do you want to do? But you don't. You tell her, "Look, honey, I know how you feel. I'm in a bad place myself." But instead of we have a choice in how we respond to people. That's our problem. We overreact. That's what I always did. I was a nuclear reactor up until I was 35. No one and nothing can take you off your square unless you let them. So you have a choice in how you respond and the way you talk to people. I just got my new car insurance premium. I couldn't believe this with Allstate. It went from $1,400 a year to $2,900. I call up my agent, and I says, "I'm going to now I had 3 claims in a year, but the claims none of them were because it was my fault. They were all hit and runs, sort of. But here's the deal: they don't go against you when it's not your fault. I call him up rather than bitch at the guy, and he's lobbying for me with Allstate, and Allstate's telling him there was a miscalculation in my credit. And I said, I just want to ask you, speaking of this, I got to just ask you something. What if I had a perfect driving record, never an accident, no tickets, and I had terrible credit? Are you telling me I'm going to pay more for my car than the same guy that owns the same car next door to me that's got great credit and has a poor driving record? He said, yes. I said, I know you're an agent, but I just got to ask you. He says, no, it's not fair. I said, so what's the methodology behind these? What are they thinking? Are they thinking that someone that has better credit is more a more cautious driver? Are they being more aware? Does that make them a more stable? If you pay your bills and you don't screw your creditors, and you know, sometimes you don't mean to not pay your bills, you just don't have the money. Are you not being aware on the road if you don't pay these bills? Is that pressure being exerted on you to make you not concentrate, or is that not even an issue? Are you just a careless person? Is this how they weigh this? In their minds, are they thinking that a person that has a better credit rating must be, here's what he tells me. They put in less claims. The statistics are that people with better credit ratings put in less accident claims. That's just still doesn't make any sense to me. Why is that? What makes them have less? But he says that's statistically speaking. So here's the rating is it goes from 1, I think he said, to 16, 1 being the highest. So in order for you to be a 1 with an insurance company, your credit rating, now you would know this, talking to the owner of the station right here, Mr. Lewis. In order to be a 1, your credit's got to be, this is an exorbitantly high credit rate, in the 800s, the high 8s. I'm in the 7s. I'm in the early 7s now, and I'm a 3. So, and I've paid some of my bills more than on time. I paid more on the bill than I even owe. Now that you might think that's crazy, but my brother taught me that if you owe a bank, like Bank America, $120, send them at $124. It fucks them up. Really, send them in an extra $10, $20. Pay more. I make more. If you can afford it, on my car payment every month, I send them an extra $15, and then my payment goes down next month. It means something on your credit. And if you owe, instead of avoiding your creditors, answer the phone and tell them things are tight right now. You got a better chance of them working with you than avoiding them. I'm telling you. So when they call you, listen, don't be afraid. I'm not working right now, or I am working right now. I'm in a pinch. I got to be honest with you. I can't send you anything right now, but please work with me, and as soon as I can, I'll send you something. I will let you know. You don't have to keep calling me. I'm telling you right now, I don't have it to send. Don't put me in collection because I want to keep my credit straight. Within a month, can I send you $25? And this is interesting. If you send them a lot less than you owe them and they accept it, it restarts your program and stops it from going into collection. So let's just say you owe $1,525 and they want you to send them $480, but you ain't got it. And now that $480 keeps going for 2 or 3 months, and you don't say nothing to them, but you send them in a check for $75, and they accept it, you're good again. You prevent it from going into credit. I learned all the tricks. Several years ago, I owed about $18,000. About 2 years later, I came into a lot of money. I called up every credit card company, and they settled for 15 cents on the dollar. And I said, listen, if you settle for this, I want to make sure that you reestablish my credit. So you know what I did? When I sent them the check, on the back of the check, I wrote, this puts me in good standing and relinquishes me from all debts and reestablishes my credit rating with all 3 credit reporting agencies. And once they cash that check, that makes that a waiver. That makes that a good legal binding document. So let's say you're having problems now with Experian. You show them this. Hey, man, they got nothing to stand on. They'll give you, because it happened to me. I had to fight for my credit back even after I made the deal. Now, I made each bank send me a letter of acceptance of the deal before I sent them the money first. And, you know, that I would have a window of 1 week for them to get the money. So I was cool. And my credit's been straight ever since. But I knew I was screwing them on purpose. I knew things were getting bad. So I was running up the charges. But I knew someday I had to make it good. So one of the biggest problems we have in this country is young men and young women, the day they enroll in college, the banks are waiting. I've seen it in Wayne State. The banks are waiting to issue these young children, these young adolescents, credit cards. And you know what the youth think? The youth, you know what they're thinking? This is not tangible dollars. They just run the card up. Every kid, I guarantee you, if they did a study of 18 to 20-year-olds that go to college that start getting credit, and I bet you the majority of them ruin their credit right away within the first 6 months. They blow it up. We're not taught budgeting. You go away to school, and your dad tells you, I'm going to give you an ATM card, which is good all over the world, and I'm going to put $1,000 in the card. And you, how much you need a month, son? Dad, let's see, I need about $380. You know he spends $1,000 the first month. Well, the dad don't have another grand to put up. He told you this. He told you, but it gets out of hand. We need to learn how to lay off and how to sacrifice. We don't need to buy everything. This is really what gets me. The Hammer builds a $25 million house, goes broke. Mike Tyson goes to 300 some odd million. If I had $1 for how many entertainers went through all their money, when an entertainer gets in the entertainment field or an athlete, they need to give them formal training how to handle money. Because if you grow up poor, all of a sudden you got a big score, several $1 million, you're thinking that pool ain't never going to end. But you never know. So just because you get a lot of bread right now, that doesn't mean you should go out and get everything you want. You need, if you're young, you need to sacrifice till you're older. I didn't buy my first home until I was 50. And I sacrificed on a stereo unit, flat screen TV. I didn't have anything. And I could have always afforded it. But when I turned 50 and I got my first home, I got myself everything I wanted. And I was glad that I waited. Because if I saved for years. We must say, if you can save, you got to try to save. You got to do everything you can. If you make $4 and you only need $1.50, I'm just giving you this example, to live on, then you need to put $1.50 away. You do not blow everything you make thinking that it's going to keep coming back. You got to save. It's everything. You got to save so when you get older, because you never know when your health is going to go. You never know if retirement's going to kick in. You just never, ever know. So it's very important that we put ourselves in check, that we control ourselves, and learn to say no. Young men, you get a fine lady, she wants to go out. Man, you just want to show her what you got. You want to show her, you go out and spend $1,000 on an outfit to take her out to the show. That's sick. You ain't got to impress nobody but yourself. You can go to Kohl's, you can go to Target, you can go to some of these off-brand stores and get clothes that are just as nice than going to get the labels. Don't fall for the labels. Now, I got to be honest, I drive a nice car, but I could take the tag off. I don't need anyone to know what I have. If I like quality, I get it from me. I see young men will not wear a Pelly Pal jean and a Jabot shirt. You know, I was in my family clothing business, and I said, let me ask you a question. Are you going to get laughed off your block? I mean, are your boys going to tell you, man, you ain't with it, man. You can't come out with us tonight, man. You just ain't part of it. And if they do, man, those ain't your boys anyway. You have to dress for you. If I had a dime for how many times I saw a man buy a new suit and he'd say, man, when I'm at the club tonight and that light shining on me in the corner and that certain angle and that, the reflection on my glasses, it's going to shine on my shoes. I'm going to be the shit. You already the shit. Before you buy anything, you already the shit. You don't need a watch to complete you. You don't need a car to complete you. And you don't need a woman, and a man don't need a woman don't need a man to complete you. If you ain't complete by yourself, don't expect anyone else to complete you, because I'm going to tell you why. When you lose them, now what do you got? You need to be whole before you add someone. Someone can only be a bonus to what you already got. Don't look for someone to be you. Don't look for someone to be complete your sentences for you. Don't look for someone to fulfill all your dreams and all your hopes. They must come from within you. We live outside of ourselves. Listen, don't misunderstand me. This is important. Money, I'm holding it, but it ain't everything. Success has to come from inside, man. It has to come from self-worth. Money is an essential tool to get through life. And if you like nice things, it's even more important to you. But everything has to come from within. Your accomplishments, your goals, got to mean something to you. You want to build something. You want to create something, hopefully. And because I'm still doing that. And my whole life, I always knew that there was something bigger that I was supposed to be doing than what I was doing. And I would never be satisfied until I found that. And I think I'm still searching. When man invented fire, he always knew, man, inclusive of men and women, he always knew he had to be busy creating. We are right brain, left brain. Right brain's our artistic side. There's a part of all men that need to create and be artistic, whatever that is for you, whatever that means, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's giving to some others, creating organizations. We must feel that from within, and that's the God in you. And if you don't get with the God in you, because that's what I learned in Narcotics Anonymous, that instead of making me my higher power or drugs, it's got to come from up top. I just want to tell you, this is it down here in Michigan. I'm talking about itswebtv.com. Now, by the way, sponsorship packages are available here, promos, you name it. Now, we're not talking about we're not necessarily just talking about my show. I'm talking about the station. There's opportunities for you to get any kind of show you want. There's gospel shows here. He's got a Bill Hill, a comedian. He's got the Nitty Gritty show where three ladies and a guy talk about issues going on amongst men and women, whatever. My show, Community. You can have any kind of show you want. You can be a star. You can do a news show here. You can have anything you want. And check this out. The reason I got a show here, this is really blowing me away. The rates that I pay here, 1 month of 4 shows costs me less money than I pay for my one other TV show. So, and he helps promote it. The owner of the station optimizes this. We need you to all tell your friends, get involved. It's webtv.com. It's on Facebook. Now, I'm Barry Ross. This is a Metro Detroit Resource Network. This is the second half of my other show, which is on Tuesday nights, www.tv33whpr.com. You can reach me at barryross.org. I spell Barry like Barry White, not B-E-R-R-Y, B-A-R-R-Y, Ross at Comcast.net. What's the telephone number for the station if they want to call you? 248-996-8907. All right. 248-996-8907 is the business office number. 248-996-8907 is It's Web TV business number if you want to inquire about getting shows, sponsorships, promos, information, concert information, you name it. All right? It's all here. You should get a news show. We need some straight up. Maybe I'll get a news show here. Naked news. Straight naked news. My penis shrunk after my prostate surgery. All right, straight up. I'll see you guys next week, and I have to thank the owner, Kevin Lewis. It's webtv.com. This is a great station. A lot of great things going on here. This is a pioneering station. All right, so I'm out till next Wednesday at 8 o'clock before Thanksgiving. All right.